I've been thinking a lot about how strange it is that we spend so much of our lives being trained for the most technical parts of living, but almost none of the emotional ones. We put so much pressure on learning math, science, social studies, how to be successful. And there's real anxiety about whether the next generation will be good at numbers and school and stuff. But there's almost no concern about whether they'll be good at relationships, empathy, understanding themselves or humanity. I mean, sure, it's cool. We can solve for X and remember the Pythagorean theorem, or at least I think I remember, or I pretend I remember, because to be honest, I kind of don't. But ask me how to communicate when I'm hurt. And suddenly, every word that I know truly just disappears from my mind. We spend hours memorizing formulas and learning how the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell or something like that. But barely any time trying to understand real emotions like shame, jealousy, fear, grief, joy, insecurities, or why we even shut down the second that something feels uncomfortable. And I think the important thing is that this isn't really a personal failure, it's more of a cultural one or even a societal one. Because as a society, especially here in like a first world country where everything's supposed to be the best, right? Everything's supposed to be the most advanced. And it's true, we're deeply committed to education here in the United States, at least. We've built entire systems on training for every conceivable profession, like doctors, engineers, programmers, lawyers, insurance brokers like myself. We have mechanisms, institutions, frameworks, and certifications for all this. If there's a skill you want to learn, society has pretty much figured out how to teach it. And yet, when it comes to emotional and psychological understanding, how to know ourselves, how to love well, how to handle pain, rejection, conflict, and how to handle change, which is huge, we mostly leave people on their own. As if knowing yourself is just supposed to happen like magically through vibes and trauma. I don't know how else to word that. So instead, we leave people alone with these incredibly complicated inner worlds, and then we act surprised when they feel anxious, disconnected, and emotionally behind, and ultimately depressed, even when everything looks fine on the outside. And to put that in perspective, I did some research. So here in the United States, about one person dies every 11 minutes by suicide. Just think about that. Over the course of this podcast, here in the United States, at least 3 to 4 people may have already lost their lives to suicide. It's a sobering reminder that emotional pain isn't rare. It's very widespread. And most of us learn emotional skills the hardest way possible, unfortunately. Through mistakes, through relationships, several different kinds of relationships, really. And through moments where we kind of sit back and think, wait, why wasn't there a class on this? And maybe the goal isn't to really have everything figured out. Maybe it's just to start paying more attention. So this is episode 3, and this is unfolding my journey on learning how to live. Before I get too into the episode, just wanted to thank everyone for staying tuned for my previous episodes and for this one. If you haven't yet, please like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and rate it 5 stars if you think it's worth 5 stars. And follow, do all of that stuff. My social media is Pat's Podcast, or you can find me at JAAAHNCAM. That's my Instagram. And I hope you guys keep listening. Thank you guys so much for the messages. Thank you guys so much for just the love that you guys have been pouring out, and supporting the podcast really means a lot to me, and it keeps me motivated to keep going. So thanks again, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy. So now that I have all that marketing stuff out of the way, let's talk a little bit more about self-help, because I don't mean this to be a self-help lecture type of video podcast, because it's not really a guide to having life perfectly figured out, because I don't and I don't think anyone really does. It's really just an honest conversation about learning how to understand ourselves. And maybe it's later than we expected or hoped, but at least it's being done, right? At least we still are doing it on some sort of time. It's funny because when we talk about self-help, a lot of the times it's kind of like a punchline. It's kind of like a joke. That whole category and genre of self-help, even like the books and the covers on the books, it's kind of mocking and making fun of the idea that we need self-help. In reality, it's just like an emotional education. So I don't really understand where the joking part of it comes from. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the idea of self-help. So making it into a silly type of joking genre attracts people more than making it a more serious, having to self-analyze oneself genre. And it's just crazy how we laugh at all those books. There's titles, I looked them up. There's titles about how to win friends in 3 minutes and the power of positive thinking for dummies. Like, why do you have to add for dummies? There's a whole genre that exists based on the for dummies self-help genre. We joke about them all the time, and in doing so, sometimes we forget the seriousness of the topic itself and how real it actually is. Because emotional education, it's essential to our life. It's literally, I want to say, the major part of how we learn how to live. And progress toward a better kind of self-help starts with reviewing a widely debased genre at this point, while keeping faith with its deeper purpose, which is learning how to live, really. I myself, I'm not a big reader. I have just actually started reading, and I've been reading a lot of like drama-based books, which is just to, I don't know. My sister kind of put me on them, so I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm a big reader. I'm just an occasional reader, but I'm trying to improve it. And I actually learned that I really like reading, and I have investigated a lot in self-help books, really a lot about emotional education, really a lot about the power of speech and the ability to communicate in sales, because that's my job. So I've read a lot of these books on how to kind of win somebody over in sales, phrasings with specific words and tones, and knowing the power behind our words. So it's funny because now that I've kind of been trying to go away from these success books, right, on how to become rich and how to be successful, and going more into, I guess I would say, psychological and emotional learning books, along with the drama ones, because they're fun and cool. Like, okay, shout out to, I just read this book called If Only I Had Told Her, and that book made me cry like 5 times. I've never in my life cried to a book like I did with that, because I haven't read that much. That book put me on to read so many more books. So yeah, anyway, what was I saying? Okay, yeah, so a lot of the times that I've been kind of reading a chapter here and there from these different books, I kind of find myself rolling my eyes a little bit at the advice, but at the same time I realized I never really stopped to think about why I was reacting the way that I was in certain relationships and certain ways of thinking. It was a funny moment, because I'm like, wait, like, this is kind of silly. But it also made me realize even ridiculous self-help books can help point to real gaps in our emotional education. Okay, let me give you guys an example. So there was a time when on TikTok there was a series, like it was 3 books that was trending, and it was about anxiety, how to overcome anxiety and overthinking. And there was 3. One was a book, one was a poetry book, and another one was like a type of journal. I bought all 3, and like I bought the collection, and I was reading the whole thing on like overthinking and everything, but halfway through I was kind of rolling my eyes, not in a, oh, like I know better than this and stuff. No, it was more like, this is kind of so simple. At the same time, I realized I never really stopped to think about why I was overthinking, which is so funny because it's just a thinking cycle. But the essence of the book was really how to control our thinking and how to stop essentially thinking, because once we start thinking, our brain just goes into override mode, and the power of our brain is crazy. Anyway, the reason I think it was so popular on TikTok was because it kind of made people realize there is a large gap in our emotional education. And I get it. Even those ridiculous little, oh, this is for dummies. Because be honest with yourself, would anyone really read them? If somebody were to tell you this book is going to tell you everything that's wrong with what you're doing right now, you'd be like, why would I want to read that? But if you're seeing something comical about, oh, look, how to tie a tie for dummies, like, I don't know if that's a real title, but those silly, funny moments, they really can make you realize the gaps that you have in that emotional education. I do understand the whole self-help genre, and I wish it was better. I wish it was presented better, and I wish it was understood better, because it's just one little tool in exploring emotional growth, which really just means learning to pay attention to myself, to ourselves, to yourself, right? Which leads me, I guess, to my next point, which is self-development. And a lot of people think self-development means, okay, I have it all figured out and I'm going to fix myself. That is not what self-development really is. It's not about fixing yourself. It's more about awareness, being aware of yourself. For me, it started small. I guess I would say it was really just about noticing my reactions to certain things, like impatience, anxiety, my reaction to when I felt defensive. Why did I feel that? Writing it down, slowly trying to understand and come up with a response rather than just reacting, because we can react sometimes just based off our emotions. And when we do that, it leads to blocking and pushing down what we're thinking or why we're being triggered a certain way. In reality, we should kind of put those emotions aside and learn how to respond to them. Learn why those emotions are even arising. And once we do that, then we can work on our self-development, because now we're aware what triggers certain things. Now we're aware why we're reacting certain ways. So rather than reacting, what's that word? It's like a phrase, reacting, and I don't know. But you guys know what I mean, I think. Because self-development is going to be a lifelong journey. It's not, okay, I worked on this, I fixed it, and I'm done. No, because some weeks, genuinely, I feel fine. Genuinely, I feel like, oh my God, I've leveled up emotionally. Like, yay. But then other weeks, I realize I'm basically back at square one. And that's okay. You know what's funny is that I used to say, and that's okay, a lot for a few months in my life. Late 2024 to early last year, well, mid of 2025, I was saying, and that's okay all the time, because funny enough, I was talking about this with a friend, and I realized at the end of my sentence, I said, you know what? And that's okay. And then we kind of gassed each other up, and we were like, that's so funny. That's true. And that's okay. So anytime something bad would happen or something unexpected or something that I was like, oh man, I didn't want that to work out that way, I would always end up with being, and that's okay, because I learned something, because I got to take something that I didn't expect, something I didn't know, something I was just experiencing for the first time, and maybe failing majority of the time, but learning from it and then growing from that, and then developing from that, right? And that's okay. So I'm gonna start saying that again a little bit more. That's funny. Anyway, going back to my point, one thing that I've been working on is my communication. I know I'm not the best at that, and it tends to bring up a lot of arguments with my friends and my family. A while back, I had a fight with someone. Nothing huge, nothing life changing or whatever, just miscommunication. Nothing too serious, just me not knowing how to communicate my feelings, I guess. Normally, I would just shut down and think about it for a few days, sulk in it, and blah, 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 and then just try to get over it. I remember trying this one time, journaling my thoughts instead, and just kind of being like, okay, why am I feeling like this? I did write a bunch of nonsense that didn't even make sense and a lot of likes. I know I say like a lot, you guys. My apologies. I'm trying my best not to say like as much, but it's funny because I even write like a lot. So I was journaling and I was writing my thoughts. It didn't solve everything. I'm not going to say it solved everything. It didn't make everything instantly better. But I did notice patterns in my behavior. It helped me notice patterns in my emotions that I didn't notice before, I hadn't seen before, and it helped me realize where certain things stem from. And that is self-development in action, right? That is me learning why I do and react certain ways, and then learning how I can now change that, how I can fix that, and when it does come up again, how I can process and respond in that moment rather than just reacting. That's self-development in action because life is so messy. Life's emotions are so complex, often contradictory. I think that's the word. It's just life. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. I think learning to sit with that is part of emotional education. We live in a world where what's celebrated is logic and control. So everyone wants everything to make sense and have control over everything. Truth is, we have control over nothing. Our minds can get very, very messy, very unpredictable, and accepting that is in some way liberating in a weird way. And I remember reading this book called The School of Life, another self-help book, and it introduced the concept of sane insanity, which I thought was so beautiful and so real. It's really just understanding chaos without being consumed by it. And the book really explained how these people who are insanely sane are kind of the emotionally evolved, mature version of a human being. Because sometimes we're seen as insane when we just say, well, there's no explanation behind that. It just kind of happened. But sometimes that's just what it is. Life is just a bunch of what ifs, a bunch of random things happening sometimes. And so we sit back and we try and figure out, okay, what's the logic behind this? What control do I have? And when in reality, sometimes we have no control. And sometimes there is no logic behind what happens. Things just happen by time and unprecedented events and by accident, and we don't have control over that. So learning to accept that in reality makes life a little bit more simpler, life a little bit more easy to deal with, especially when we have to make difficult decisions, because instead of being consumed by that chaos of what is going on, acknowledging, okay, there's no way for me to explain this, but I do have to go through it and I do have to get past it. So what do I do? Like, what are my steps moving forward? I remember feeling completely overwhelmed by big life decisions when I was graduating high school. I was in debate whether or not I should go to college, and that was, I want to say, not even one of the scariest moments of my life, but it was still very chaotic. I remember every day my brain was yelling, my heart was racing, my anxiety was over the roof, and I just really had to sit with it and accept the chaos, accept what was coming to me, because I decided not to go to college, and I got attacked by everyone. I got attacked by literally everyone. I graduated with a 4.2 GPA, I think, weighted. Yeah, because I took, what are those courses called? You see how useless, like, I don't even remember what those courses are called. AP courses, dang. I was a very smart kid. I was involved in, like, every after school activity. I worked in high school. My college apps were insanely good. Okay, they were really good. I got into a lot of schools, a lot of scholarships, a lot of full rides, and a lot of good schools. Like, I'm talking Ivy League schools. I don't say this to brag. I say this to explain the chaos in my life at that moment, because I'm over here like, I don't want to go to college. And then I have these teachers yelling at me, literally yelling at me. I had a teacher say he was gonna, no, what did he say? He was like, eres tan cabezadura, which means, oh my God, you're so hard-headed. And he yelled at me in front of the whole class. And then I remember this other teacher was like, oh my God, you're throwing your life away. Why would you do that? Basically saying how my life was going to end with nothing and I was throwing away such a big future. I had a lot of pressure from school, and then I had a lot of pressure at home because because a relative of mine, I'm not going to say who, was yelling at me saying, oh my God, you're possessed by demons. Oh my God. It's so crazy when I think back on it. It was so chaotic. I was at school, they were yelling at me. I went home, they were yelling at me. My mom was not very understanding at the moment. Now she's like super understanding, and she is super grateful that I decided what I decided. And just at the time, because it was new to her, all her life, she literally, her purpose of coming to this country and raising us was to go to higher education, and we were raised on that. I could not get lower than an A ever in my life. I could not get a bad grade ever in my life. I maintained straight A's all my life with the idea that I was going to go to college and be something of a big profession, be a huge, I don't know, scholar and whatever, because that in Hispanic households is super important because it's something that they never had the opportunity to have, which I completely understand. And so I also understood my mom's dreams, my mom's illusions of the future being destroyed in that moment. So of course she was going to have some struggle with that. And ultimately she was super supportive and has always been my number one supporter and biggest fan. But in that moment she wasn't, so it was very chaotic. And then my siblings, my older brother was in college, and, it was very, very just chaotic. I had a lot of stuff going on, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with my life? I was about to go work at CVS, guys. I was hired as a part-time manager. I did not work there for not even one day. I did the urine exam and whatever, and I was supposed to go for like some classes. I don't know why they had classes. I don't even know if I can share that, but whatever. And I didn't even end up going there because I started working in insurance. And funny enough, even while I was working in insurance, I was like, you know what? I'm going to accept going to NJIT because I had a full ride there anyway. So I was like, I'm not going to waste any money, whatever. I'll give it a try just to make people happy. And I accepted it, and then I never went. I paid the enrollment fee because that was the only thing I had to pay. I think it was like $250 of an enrollment fee. I paid it, and I never went. They sent me my orientation day and everything. I never went. And I had the NJIT email for years after. I'm being so serious when I say I think it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago, 2023, when I finally got an email saying my NJIT email was no longer active. Like, I was getting emails to this email. It was so funny because I never even went, one day in my life, and I was getting these things about like class and everything. I'm like, I'm not enrolled in anything. Anyway, I hope you guys got like a little bit understanding of the chaos in my life at that moment. If I had just let that chaos consume me and just given up, I think I would have gone crazy. I genuinely think I would have gone insane in just that one moment. And when I look back, it's not even one of the hardest moments of my life. It's actually pretty trivial, pretty simple. At that moment in time, I had kind of learned how to process things. So I kind of accepted the chaos, and I made a choice. And I made a choice anyway that went against what a lot of people thought was going to be for my benefit. And it felt insane at the time, but I survived. I'm here. And I learned a lot about myself. And honestly, it was the best decision I could have made. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, well, what if this and what if that? Well, guess what? There's no what ifs because it didn't happen. It did not happen. So I can't get stuck in that insanity of the what if. No, I have to realize that I survived it. I made my decision. And in the process, I learned a lot about myself. I continue learning a lot about myself, and I continue to surprise myself sometimes when I do certain things, when I achieve certain things. I'm like, wait, how the heck did that even happen? Like, I just think back to 2019 me, and I just wish I could show him a video of like, hey, this is you, recap 2025 in your life, like your career thing, whatever, in your profession, just so I could be a little bit more at ease in that moment. But yeah, life is chaotic. Like, life is truly chaotic. And we just have to learn to accept that. We just have to learn to accept that. Along with its chaos, I think there is a lot of melancholy in life. And it's not something we should avoid. I think it's more of a teacher. And when I say melancholy, I don't mean like depression. Some of the deepest insights I've had about life, love, about myself came in moments of just quiet melancholy. Not depression necessarily, just moments of sad reflection, of heavy thinking. It's weirdly satisfying to sit alone with a cup of coffee. If you're watching, you can see my coffee. or a Celsius because I love Celsius. If you know me, then you know that. And realize, yes, I'm sad, but also kind of brilliant in my misery. I remember a few weekends ago, even, I was stuck inside, feeling really lonely, questioning a lot about certain friendships, and I could have easily distracted myself with endless TV and endless doom scrolling on TikTok, as I honestly normally do. Instead, I just sat with myself, listened to music because music is my go-to, and thought about my reactions and my patterns. And by the end, I had a lot of clarity that I couldn't have gotten any other way. I think if we avoid that melancholic state of deep analyzing and thinking and sadness that comes with life, we can avoid a lot of self-development. We can avoid a lot of feelings, a lot of patterns and reactions that we have, instead of acknowledging that they're real, that they exist. Because a lot of the times people just say, oh, get past it. They simplify a lot of stuff. And it's not to say that I'm condoning and encouraging constant state of sadness and depression, because I'm really not. I really do believe we should work on those things, learn how to get out of those mental states. But I also think it's important to acknowledge the times that we are feeling certain things, because if not, we're bottling it up inside, stuffing it down until it explodes. Everything's going to have its limit. Everything's going to explode at a certain time. It's like shaking a can of soda. You're going to shake it and eventually it's going to explode because it just can't handle it anymore. It's the same with our brains, with our minds. It's so, again, messy, so chaotic up there, that if we don't sit and listen to the emotions at the time, and a lot of the time when we're doing deep thinking, we get sad because it's sad to know that we're wrong. It's sad to know that we feel like failures, and it's sad to know that something could have been different. But it also leads to self-analyzation, if that's a word, and and it also leads to a lot of clarity, because we process those emotions, we move on from them, and we allow space for them to then leave. Some insights we get can be very simple. Empathy, listening and noticing our own feelings can be very simple, but it can also be very obscure, very difficult, very mysterious at times, especially our emotional habits, our unconscious patterns, and our inherited traumas. Learning to live isn't complicated in theory, but in practice, it's very, very tricky. It's like trying to understand when a dog is chasing his tail. You kind of look at it and you're like, okay, it's so simple. You're like, oh, that's cute. But at the same time, you're like, what? Why is he doing that? And it's funny because society has really framed it to be that if I'm able to say the most complex words and the most in-depth sentence that nobody can really understand, I'm seen as somebody intellectual and somebody intelligent. But in reality, it's like, what did he even say? I didn't understand it. Oh my God, he has to be so smart. No, I'm not. It's not the most complicated things that we have to understand, if that makes sense. It really just starts with the little things. It really just starts with the simple things. Sometimes we knock things down because we're like, oh, I already know that. That's so easy. That's so simple. Duh, obviously. Obviously, then why aren't we applying it? That's the funny part, is that we look at things sometimes. We're like, well, obviously. Well, duh. But then we're not applying it in our life. How can we be so against what's so simple because we want to feel superior, because we want to feel more intelligent? I think what makes us more intelligent and emotionally superior is really just the ability to acknowledge that it's so simple sometimes. A lot of the times I feel like books and videos, they overcomplicate and overcomplexize. Is that a word? Take a shot every time I say, is that a word? No, I'm just kidding. What was I saying? Oh my God. Hold on, chat. Let me look at my notes again. Chat. Okay, chat. We should be graceful enough to acknowledge that a lot of the stuff that nourishes us emotionally is humiliatingly simple. Like, it's structurally so simple. And a lot of the times we don't allow simple things to make its way into our brain because we're like, I know that already, push it out. But can we be sophisticated enough to not reject a truth just because it sounds so simple? Or just because it sounds like something we're already supposed to know? Clearly we don't. Clearly society is missing something and doesn't know, because we as people don't know. That's part of our maturity, is realizing how little we actually do know. Because as complex as our bodies are and our minds are, we can simply die because we're thirsty, because we didn't drink water. We can die because we fell the wrong way and hit our head. Our life can so simply and easily be taken. Yet it's made up of such complexity and such misunderstanding that a lot of the times we feel that in order for us to be smart, or in order for us to be ahead of the game, we have to know complex things. It's not always like that. I mean, sure, knowing higher vocabulary and knowing higher ways of phrasing and higher methods to speaking can elevate, of course, your speech, and can elevate maybe a position at work. But when we break down our life, our understanding of life, our emotional understanding of life, how do we live on a daily basis, it can be so simple sometimes. Most of the times it could be so simple because it's a trauma that we'd never even realized from 15 years ago. It's a conversation we had 3 years ago that we keep replaying in our head. It's a feeling we felt when we were little kids and somebody left us behind. And how do we go from that? How do we move forward from that? How do we grow emotionally from that? It's simple. Understanding those emotions, processing those emotions, and learning how to respond to them rather than react to them. Funny enough, I think in our self-development, a lot of the times we want to have some sort of superiority, some sort of higher level understanding. The other day I was having a conversation with some friends, and I was saying how funny it was that sometimes when I was little I would say, I'm 6 but I'm almost about to be 7. Or, guys, I have such a brain rot. Oh my god, I literally thought I was 6, 7 subconsciously. That's so funny but so concerning. I'm sorry. Anyway, let me get back to the point. Okay, let's say I was 9, and I would typically say, I'm 9, but I'm about to be 10 years old. I'm 12, but I'm about to be a teenager. I'm about to be 13 next month. I'm about to be 13 in 5 weeks. Nobody says that when they're older. I don't say right now, I'm 25, but I'm about to be 26. No, actually, in fact, it's kind of the opposite. I'm 25, but I just turned 25. Like, I was 24 last month. I was 24 2 months ago. And so on and so on. When I was 24, I was like, oh, I just turned 24. Like, I was 23 last week, you know? It's funny because where does that come from is just our idea that our life has to be more complex because we're older. That our life is based on promotions. And if we don't have promotions in our secular work, like our careers and our professions or our personal lives, then something's wrong with us, and something is going wrong in our lives. And we see it as a timeline. When we were younger, we saw us being older as a way of evolving, as a way of growing, as a way of, okay, I'm 12 now, but I'm going to be 13, which is going to mean I'm going to be a completely different person because I'm going to be a teenager and I'm going to have more understanding. Now we kind of reject that. Now we're kind of like, I don't want to be older, because the older I get, the more I understand that I have failed, the more that I have failed. And it's a constant idea of failure in our mind. That's a constant battle that, for example, I face all the time. I think I'm way behind schedule. I think the reason why I say, oh, I just turned 25 though, is because I don't want to feel like I'm 25 and I've done nothing. I don't want to feel like I'm way behind the other 25-year-olds who I see online and on social media, because let's be honest, social media foments something that is not real. Social media foments the opposite of self-development and growth and emotional understanding, because it's fake. Everything you see on social media tends to be fake. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it in everyone presents the best of the best online, because nobody wants to show the negatives in their lives. Anyway, my point really is that self-development is a lifelong journey. And maybe when we're 13 years old, we're looking forward to being an inch taller. And by the time we're 18, we realize we are no longer going to grow in height. and that our life and future and career has started. So what? It can be as simple as just acknowledging that that's part of life and just being aware. And that is really the first step towards change. There is growth after your teenage years and after you enter your 20s, and then I imagine our 30s and 40s and 50s and so on, because there's always going to be growth emotionally. There's always going to be a chance for us to grow as better people, as more understanding people, as more empathetic people, because every day is a learning lesson. Every day is an opportunity to learn something new, to about ourselves, maybe about other people, about our community and people that surround us. And I think that's really as simple as it can get. Just building awareness, paying attention around us. So what have we learned today? What have I learned today? Because my mind's been all over the place, I feel like, in this podcast. So apologies to anyone who is kind of lost right now. Let this kind of stick with you then. Emotional education is not easy. It's really lifelong, and it's not widely taught, but that does not make it impossible. It's really about noticing yourself, sitting with complexity, accepting contradictions, valuing melancholy, learning from both the simple and the obscure parts of our minds. Remember, progress isn't linear, and sometimes the path looks very, very messy and long. But starting to pay attention is truly the right first step. So, take what resonated, leave what didn't. I appreciate everyone that listened, maybe got a little bit of insight. You guys thought I forgot about Song of the Week. I did, so let me go look one up. This week's Song of the Week is, drumroll please, Black Friday. I'm so sorry because this is a really, really sad song, but please go listen to it. Black Friday by Tom Odell is one of the most soul-crushing songs I've heard in my life, but at the same time, it helped me understand my feelings so much. It helped me process so much of my emotions. It's about how, like, we can make up a lot of stuff in our head because we want to be someone that we're not. There's a line that, oh my god, I have to look this up. I'm sorry, you guys, hold on. One of my favorite lines, he goes, I'm going to read it to you guys right now. He says, "It's all in my head. It's all in my mind. I'm so selfish. You're so kind. I look in the mirror, what is happening to me?" What? The lyrics are so beautiful. It's such a reflective tone. The whole song is such a somber, reflective tone. It really just deals with a lot of internal conflict and thoughts, like dark thoughts about love, yes, but also emotional vulnerability. And another one of my favorite lines, I'm going to read it. It says, "I want a better body. I want better skin. I want to be perfect like all your other friends." We're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. So oh my God. This song is just insecurity, self-image. It's just a song that beautifully captures the feeling of internal struggle, even when life looks really good and bright on the outside. It's not just a love song. Yes, it does talk about love, but it's also a raw confession of how tough it can be to love yourself, especially in a world that seems to expect perfection. This song just reminds me a lot that emotional struggles aren't something to be ashamed of. They're part of being human, and we always carry deep insecurities and inner conflicts, and that's exactly why learning how to understand ourselves matters so much. I remember a period in my life where I felt amazing things on the outside. I felt so good on the outside, but inside I was asking myself the same questions that Tom was singing about. Like, what is happening to me? And I think I went over that maybe in the first episode. So that's exactly why this song hits so close to home. So I hope you guys go ahead and go look for the song, listen to it, enjoy it as much as I did, and really just sink into the vulnerability of the song, not just the surface level meaning. All right, guys, today's setting for the podcast was my office. So if you guys have seen the office setup, it is because I am recording from my desk. So if you guys ever need help with insurance, hit me up, I guess. But no, that's not why I did it here. I just did it here because I stayed for work late, and the cool thing about having my portable setup is I can record anywhere. So just being honest with you guys, I stayed till like 8 p.m. working, and then I ate something really quick and I said, I gotta film. So, not the location I wanted to do it in. A new location has been unlocked. Anyway, guys, thank you again for listening. Please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. If you're listening on Spotify, you can also leave a comment, or you can also give me a 5-star rating if you really enjoyed the episode and the podcast. Make sure to listen to episodes 1 and 2, already out as well. And shout out to like the 7 people in Russia that are somehow listening. I see you and I appreciate you. Shout out to everyone here in America also. I know our first season with Pats had listeners in, I think, around 12 countries. So we're in 2 right now. Let's aim for some more, I guess. And thank you to everyone showing love and support. As always, please remember, the point of this episode was that maybe the goal isn't to have everything figured out. It's, I think, impossible to do that. Maybe it's just to start paying attention. So this has been episode 3, and this has been unfolding my journey on learning how to live. I will see you guys next Thursday.